This September, the EWG Scarlet Knights Alumni Association invites you to join us to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the founding of Exeter West Greenwich High School. In this video series, we'll chat with longtime faculty and staff to remember some stories you know, and maybe a few you haven't heard.
Yeah, I remember being interviewed in a construction trailer. I remember the principal asking me, what if a student said beep to you in class? And being fresh out of college and sitting there in my suit and tie and probably my jaw hung open at the question. I had come back from a second interview and I said, if I'm hired, what would I be teaching? And he said, oh, I've got that right here. He turned around, reached into a file drawer and pulled out a blank piece of paper and said, here's your curriculum. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's a brand new school and nothing's set up, and I'll get to write that first chapter for the tech ed program. To have so much say in the shape of how it's going to look and how it's going to function. It was rough. It was a rough start. I mean, there were no policies. We didn't know how we operated. We didn't know how we were supposed to operate. We had a general idea, but it was all brand new. This district spent a lot of money bringing in equipment from IBM. And we had what was called a token ring network at the time, and that was state of the art. It was like 16 megabits per second. Like, wow, bandwidth that you just couldn't fathom at the time. And then that networked hundreds of machines. We were IBM's showpiece for a long time, for several years, and it was a familiar sight to see Bruce Gardner and others from IBM dragging along a cohort of people, administrators, school committee members from other districts across New England to say, yeah, this is what we've done with Exeter West Greenwich. This is how they're using technology. So yeah, we were really a model school for a lot of other districts for a long time. There was no internet, there was no email, you weren't connected to anything else. Norm Levier was instrumental in helping get email in this building, and he ran a bulletin board system called Tech BBS. You could read news articles and discussion forums and things on different topics. And those messages would come in periodically. It wasn't like an active connection. That machine would dial into a service provider, and you could send and receive email through that, but it wasn't instantaneous. That thing might dial out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to take your 11 a.m. email and send it on its way. But it really didn't matter back then because no one was really using email. We were actually a pilot for Lego Dacta for a while, where we were helping develop and evaluate curriculum for their control lab product, which was kind of like some of the earlier Lego stuff that you may have used. And that was kind of interesting, working with the Lego people on the curriculum. So I taught in the junior and senior high from day one. I was supposed to have a woodworking class, Woodworking 1. There was no lab. I had Woodworking 1 in a classroom for probably the first 6 months. That was it. And we did a lot of cardboard carpentry, laminating cardboard to try to pretend it was wood, and yeah, it didn't work so well. It was a frustrating experience. The kids were mad. You had to imagine their frustration. They were already in the Coventry school system the year before, and they got brought back to Exeter West Greenwich. They had elected or been assigned a woodworking class. They were stuck in a classroom. Probably the sharpest tool we had was a pencil. And there was an angry crew. And rightly so. They were either at NK or Coventry, and on their way, they got brought back here. The school wasn't finished, it wasn't ready, certain things weren't ready. And even when that shop became available, none of the equipment was connected to electricity for a long time. The junior high tech ed room had probably 5 or 6 computers in it. Senior high tech ed probably had a dozen or so for AutoCAD and some other things like that. So it was in the TV studio, the old TV studio control room. If you climbed up over the overhead ceiling, being careful not to, or the suspended ceiling, being careful not to collapse it, you could get up into that area, which is what we did, to get a network cable to a teacher or an aide that needed one. Happily today it's wireless and like, okay, here's your device, here you go. Midnight Madness was, that was fun. I mean, you had crews that would go watch the movie or the movies. You had people that were more, physical activity, sports oriented. They would play basketball or volleyball all night. Breakfast, Midnight Madness breakfast. EWG Kids was a huge fundraiser. There were some lean years in the early 90s, and the community banded together behind a huge effort to fund sports and other activities. Races, the principal in a dunk tank, cow patty flopping or flipping contests and things like that. There are leaks in this roof that have leaked since day one. Those windows that you look at the end of the corridor, I'm sure that floor was wet a number of times when you walked in the morning after a northeast rain. And if you come in after a northeast rain, there'll be water there again. Between the library door, main entrance, and the Tin Knight, that section of corridor will be wet. It was wet in 1990, it'll be wet again. The walkways weren't paved, and the frost was coming out of the ground. So we're all trudging through mud that's about 4 inches deep. Like just, kids losing their shoes in the mud, and on some of those early days, yeah, coming in from a fire drill and the frost is coming out of the ground and it's sloppy. My shoe. It was just goofy things like that don't happen now because the walkways are paved. In that 93, 94 time frame, I did go for 2 different trainings. One was to IBM in Atlanta. It was like boot camp for working on IBM PS2 computers, troubleshooting, the whole works. Oh my gosh, that was so long ago, and the only place you're going to see one of those machines now is in a museum. I can remember hearing Mr. Clayman's voice, and he would walk down the corridor at a fairly rapid pace 2 or 3 minutes before the late bell in the morning. And at the sound of his voice, kids would just scatter. It was very effective. The corridors just cleared. And maybe it's true in every school where teachers think there's a unique faculty here, but I think there really is a unique group of people that have kept this place going and going strong. There have been people that have gone out of their way to really, really help keep this place the best that it could possibly be. That's been awesome to be part of, because that rising tide helps everybody. So yeah, it was brand new. And having the opportunity to choose at the time, I had applied for several positions, and I thought, I'm never going to have the chance to help open a new school ever again. And that was part of the deciding factor to come here. And happy I did. And the school has provided, and the district has provided nothing but opportunity that I would not have seen in other districts. I know I wouldn't have.